engine we adore is a really useful engine, you know, 'cause the fat controller, he told him so. Now he's got a punchline to call his very own. He's the really useful engine we adore. He's the one. He's the number one. Thomas the Tank Engine. He's the really useful engine we adore.
One day, Bill and Ben were at Vickerstown Station after finishing their work as Hero arrived from the mainland pulling a blue and white coach. "Hello, Hero," said Wilbert. "What brings you here this time?" "I brought an old coach over from the mainland," replied Hero, "and she needs special care. I need someone to look after her." "Well, unfortunately for me," replied Bear, "I got work to do over on the mainland. And for me," added Wilbert, "I gotta work at the timber yard." "Maybe we can help," said Bill and Ben. The other engines were very surprised on what they just heard. "Are you sure about this, you two?" asked Bear cautiously. "You know, taking care of a coach, especially an old one, is a big responsibility." "Oh, how hard could it be?" said Bill. "We take care of a lot of things over at the clay pits." "Then I'll leave Victoria to you two then," replied Hero. "But remember, Victoria is a very old coach, so she needs special care." "Will do," replied the twins. So Victoria was placed onto a siding near the diesel works with Bill and Ben. "It's nice to meet you two," said the old coach. "And you two look like you're one of the most responsible engines I've ever seen." "Ah, shucks," said Bill. "We are very responsible, aren't we, Ben?" Sort of. Yes, very, really responsible." Victoria smiled. "I can see that," she replied. "But it would be nice to have a nice long run. I never had one in a while." "Maybe we can help," said Bill and Ben. "We can take you all over the island for you to see all the sights of Sodor." "I would appreciate that so much." So Bill and Ben took Victoria all over the island for her to see all the sights, and she really enjoyed it. By the end of the day, Bill, Ben, and Victoria were at the Brown Turntable at Tidmouth. "That was pleasant," said Victoria, "seeing all the different sights of the island of Sodor here, both big and small, short and tall, especially all different kinds of engines working hard and being really useful." "Thank you, Bill and Ben. You two are very good friends." "Oh, it's no problem," they replied. "Anything for a new friend here on Sodor." Just then, Edward puffed in. "Hello, Bill and Ben. And, Victoria, is that you?" "Edward, it's been a long time." Bill and Ben were very surprised. "You two knew each other?" they asked. "Of course we do," replied Edward. "Victoria and I used to work on the same railway, the Furnace Railway. That's where we're from. Right, Victoria?" "You're right, Edward. And it's so great to see you again after many years." Edward looked over at Bill and Ben. "Bill and Ben, mind if I use Victoria for tomorrow for a passenger train?" "Of course," replied Bill. "She'll be waiting for you in the yard." The next day, Bill and Ben were still snoozing after morning as Edward puffed in. "Bill and Ben, you said Victoria's in the yard." "She is," replied the twins. "We asked Philip to shunt her onto a siding there. Haven't you seen her?" "No," replied Edward. "Once I entered the yard, she was not there in any of the sidings." "Well, that's strange," said Ben. "And there aren't any spare coaches in the yard, and without one, I cannot take my passengers anywhere." "I must be on time. I must be on time. I must be on time." "Well, that solves our mystery," said Bill. "Sydney is pulling Victoria. He's doing your job for you. What were we waiting for? Said Edward frantically. We must go after him. And the three engines raced out the siding to chase after Sydney and Victoria. Meanwhile, Sydney arrived at Wellsboro Station where Bertie is waiting. Hello, Sydney, said Bertie. And where's Edward? Was he supposed to be pulling Victoria to Bickerstown? Sydney was confused, but he knew he didn't have time to talk to Bertie, so he just left without saying a word. Just then, Bill, Ben, and Edward came zooming through and right past Bertie. Wait, Edward? Bill? Ben? I wonder what's going on. As Sydney arrived at the Slaughter Airport, there were many passengers waiting for him at the runway. As soon as they got on, Sydney left. Just as Bill, Ben, and Edward came into the airport. Excuse me, they asked to Rosie, who's not too far away, but have you seen Sydney? Oh yes, she replied. He's pulling a blue and white coach towards Bickerstown. Thank you, said the three engines. Catch that coach. At Bickerstown Station, Sir Tom, Hat, and Winston were waiting as Sydney rolled in. Sydney, where have you been? You're supposed to be here a few hours ago to pick up these cars full of crates for Brenham Docks. That's why I told him, sir, said Victoria, but he wouldn't believe me and just wouldn't listen. Anyway, where is Edward? And together all at once, Bill, Ben, and Edward arrived. Sydney, I'm supposed to be taking Victoria here, not you. Sorry, sir. I guess Sydney may have forgot what work he was given and thinks that my work is his work he's supposed to be doing today. Oops. Sorry, Edward. Sorry, sir. It's quite all right, Sydney. We all forget sometimes, but if you don't remember and keep forgetting, it will cause confusion and even some delay, especially if you keep doing it over and over again. Don't worry, sir. I'll try to remember. Good. Now then, as for you, Edward, since your work is already done, you can take Sydney's freight cars for him, and for you, Sydney, you'll be spending the rest of the day at the diesel works. As for you two, he said to Bill and Ben, you two have to go back to the clay pits where you work there as well as belong there. Yes, sir, said all the engines. That afternoon, Bill and Ben were at the clay pits talking to each other about the crazy and fun day as Timothy puffed in to collect some cars. Come on, you two. Chop, chop, chop. We gotta get done by nightfall. Less talking and more working. The twins looked at each other and smiled, and they immediately got back to work.